Hello to all my fellow geneticists out there. Well, at least 7th grade geneticists. I wore my special shirt today just because we were talking about DNA and deoxyribonucleic acid. If you wore your shirt, that's great too. But if you didn't, I will forgive you. You're forgiven. You do not need to wear your DNA shirt when we study DNA. It's always helpful. Helps you to remember things. On your lab book, you're going to go ahead and record your topic at the top and date and have room for your main ideas and concepts. Don't forget to have a place there ready to record and highlight your vocab words. You do not need to put a definition there, but a word or a picture, just something to help you to remember them would be great. Let's dig into DNA. So, what exactly is DNA and how is it related to these things called genes and chromosomes? So, DNA is made up of little pieces called genes. So, if you have a strand of DNA, a little piece of it, that is called a gene. So, a gene is basically a smaller part of your DNA. And on your DNA, there's codes, and some of the codes are short codes. They're short strands of DNA, and some of them are very long strands of DNA to make the code. The proteins are the things that produce the code. When DNA gets all wrapped up and put together, it's formed into something called a chromosome. The chromosomes are the little X's that we looked at when we were talking about mitosis. They are found inside the nucleus of a cell. They are the code that builds an organism because of the genes that are within the DNA inside of the chromosomes. So I have this shirt on, this DNA shirt. It's made up of threads. The threads are the DNA, and the chromosomes would be the actual shirt. And the little pieces of thread would be the genes. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. The smallest is the genes, a little bit bigger is the DNA, and when you wrap the DNA all up together, they make up chromosomes. You have 23 of them inside of your body, by the way. Chromosomes, that is. So a little bit of a history of DNA. It all started off back in the late 1860s. And there was a chemist in Switzerland, Swiss chemist by the name of Friedrich Miescher. And he found this stuff called DNA, except he called it nuclein. That's what he discovered. He discovered DNA, but he called it something different. Does it sound familiar? Like cells, animalcules, and then cells? Later on, Rosalind Franklin took an X-ray of DNA. Now, we're talking tiny stuff, but she took an X-ray of it and found out the structure of it looked like a ladder. So, a little bit later, along with the help of Rosalind Franklin and her X-ray, Watson and Crick, James Watson and Francis Crick, made a model of the actual ladder shape of DNA. It's called a double helix. It's basically a ladder, but it's been twisted, so it looks like a spiral staircase. So that's a brief history. Some of the people who were involved in discovering DNA, discovering the shape of DNA. So when it comes to actually looking at DNA and the shape of DNA, it is made up of sides of the ladder, which are the phosphates and sugar. And by the way, that's deoxyribose. That's what the sugar is in DNA. See the ose part, like glucose and fructose and lactose. That's the sugar in milk. While deoxyribose is the sugar inside of DNA. The rungs of the ladder are then the base pairs. Those are A, T, C, and G. And you can see I have little chemical formulas of all those A, T, C, and G here on my shirt: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. Now, A always matches with T. If you remember it, A, T, and T, or they're letters that only have straight lines in them. C always matches with G. C and G look alike. They're curvy lines. And if that little straight line on the G throws you off, then don't use that way. But they're circular lines versus straight lines, A goes with T, A, T, and T, C goes with G. That's how they're built together. So if on the left side's an A, the right side's always going to be a T. That's what builds the code inside of your body. Now, genes go through, or DNA goes through this process of replication. It looks like a play button on here, but don't try to push that play button because it will not play a video. That's just the thing that cuts it apart. So one molecule of DNA goes through this machine, and the A goes to one side, and the T goes to the other, and the G goes to one side, and the C goes to the other. But after it moves to those sides, has been cut apart, it's rematched with its pair. So if an A goes to the right, it's matched with a new T, and the T that went to the left gets matched with a new A. And so it builds a perfect copy of the DNA molecule. And this actually happens during interphase of mitosis, replication. Sometimes when replication happens, there are mutations. Things get switched around. That little cutter might cut something a little bit wrong or different. And there's basically something can be added, something can be taken out, or something can actually be replaced. So, the AT might be kicked out, and so it doesn't have the same code anymore than it used to. Or an A and T might jump in. Or instead of the A and T, a G and C might somehow jump into there. Because as this is all happening, there's all this stuff kind of just hanging around waiting to match up with the partners as the DNA gets broken apart. But that is sometimes how mutations happen. Mutations can also happen through natural means, UV rays, X-rays, sunlight. Sometimes those can happen. The only difference between those and the other mutations are happening at the genetic level. These are happening just in body cells, and so they're not necessarily going to cause the same problem over time because it will not necessarily be passed down. It's just happening in a few DNA in a few of your cells. Obviously, mutations. Yeah. So most are harmless, but sometimes they can be harmful. A lot of times when a mutation happens, that cell that was created in that mutation simply dies. But sometimes they are actually passed along. And so some of the traits that we currently have are there because of what once was a mutation. So that's a little bit about DNA, about chromosomes, about genes, some of the background information that you need to know when it comes to genetics. Go ahead and write yourself a little quiz, 3 to 5 questions that help you to understand DNA or that you think somebody would need to know about DNA, and have a great day. We'll see you